Breaking news, this is Merrie Louisana, the Beverly Hills Shaman. What we're about to see is a press conference with Amy Schumer and her cousin, Senator Charles Schumer, regarding the Louisiana shooting at a movie theater where her film Trainwreck was showing. 2 women died in this senseless shooting and 9 were injured. About a plan they have for amending some of the gun control restrictions that would prevent some of the horrible devastation that we're seeing with killings one after the other.
5% of the guns used in gun crimes do not come from New York City. They come from states that have much weaker laws than we do, without background checks, without a good NICS system. There's something, I-95, we once dubbed the firearms freeway, but they come up from South Carolina, Georgia. If we could tighten up background checks nationally, fewer guns would come to New York. Yes, sir.
This question is for Amy. We saw some indications that the perpetrator here had some rather radical views about gender, vitriolic reactions to the feminism in your movie. Do you think feminism is under attack, and are women particularly in danger from this type of violence?
I got about 1 million emails from friends telling me it could have been any movie, and I'm trying to believe that, but I'm not sure. I think the idea of women's equality, making anyone upset, is not something I'll ever understand. I think women are always in a great threat of violence, just statistically. But I know personally that I'm someone, and the people I'm close to, who, when these sort of things happen, we mourn and then we get angry, and it'll just make us fight harder and rise up and rally together to fight against this kind of violence and any other kind of aggression that comes toward us.
Yes, for Ms. Schumer, what's your next step in this interview? And it's the first time you're speaking out, but what plans do you have to what the defendant is doing, and what else can you do?
Well, first, I wanted to go to Louisiana as soon as this happened, but the victims' families and the people who were injured wanted a little more time. They thought it was too soon, so my next step is to go as soon as they'll allow me to come visit, if I can provide any sort of relief. I don't know. And then
personally with the family.
Yeah, with the families, with those injured, and the doctors who helped, and then I'm not sure what my next step will be, but I'm sure I'll be in a room like this with you again.
Senator Schumer?
Yes.
What do you think is going to be the biggest obstacle in trying to get the states to cooperate with this national
Well,
survey?
I'm hopeful that the gun lobby will see what we're doing does not infringe on the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment says you have a right to bear arms, but it's not absolute. And we all agree, even the gun lobby, that felons shouldn't get guns. I think we all agree that spousal abusers shouldn't get guns. I think we all agree that those adjudicated mentally ill shouldn't get guns. So all we want to do is tighten up the system. So I am hopeful that given the horror of the summer and mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting, young women, soldiers, churchgoers, all affected, will, say to the gun lobby, stop being so intransigent against common sense laws. And maybe I don't expect them to lead a parade in support of this legislation, but if they just back off their opposition, we could get it passed.
Jill Jorgensen from the Observer. For Amy Schumer, this is an issue that's obviously extremely heated politically as a comedian. I'm sure you're no stranger to backlash or things like that, but are you anticipating any level of backlash for your coming out in support of gun control? What do you expect? Yeah, I am expecting a backlash, and I'll handle it the way I've handled it the last 10 years. I've had death threats and a lot of hate directed toward me, but I'm someone who I want to be proud of the way I'm living and what I stand for, and so there was no question. I was so happy when Chuck called me, and I did. The first thing I said was, I hope you're calling me to work together about gun restrictions, and I hope people are able to decipher the difference between I'm not saying I'm against the Second Amendment. I'm just saying I'm for these restrictions and common sense to protect everybody.
I just want to say, I mean, it's obvious to me and to all of you, Amy's intelligence and her passion, it's genuine and it's deep.
Hey, do you have any plans to join the Italians in Washington around here?
We're sticking to this subject. Yes.
Frank Brown from New York One. For both of you, could you tell us a little bit about your relationship before partnering on this issue, how well you know each other, and if this is a sign that you may collaborate on other issues going forward?
Well, I know Amy's dad. I used to go over to their house in East Meadow and play stickball with Gordon and other things when we were kids in the 50s and early 60s. And then Amy began to get famous and people asked, are you related? And I said, well, I didn't know at first, but I found out quickly that she was Gordon's daughter, so she's my second cousin once removed. And then we happened to meet at Shakespeare in the Park. I can't remember what it was. What they were playing, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. And we began talking to one another, just catching up and all of that. And when this horrible incident happened in Lafayette and Amy spoke out, I said, wow, you know, she's such a voice with so many followers, so many people who care about what she does. And, you know, what she does has a real depth to it. And so I figured I'd call. And as she said, I was so gratified. I didn't even have to ask because I said, hi, Amy, this is Cousin Chuck. She said, I hope you're going to ask me to do something with young gun control.
Yeah, and I'm so proud to be related to the senator. No one ever believed me that I was related to him. Yeah, just over the years we've run into each other a couple times in New York, just in passing. And I hope this is the beginning of many collaborations. But yeah, I've always been really proud of being related. Whether it was a set I was working on, a kid would come over to me at PA and say, hey, we had a street laid out and you know, Senator Schumer, like, took care of it. You know, just little stories like that where I was like, everything I've ever heard or read, I'm so proud.
But I do want to say this, I did get my comeuppance in September because my nephew, whose name is Max Schumer, started college and he had 4 roommates. They didn't know who he was. And they rushed in on him and said, are you related? And he said, well, of course. My uncle is Senator Schumer. They said, who's he? Are you related to Amy?
So I've made it.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Prayer in New York. Ms. Schumer, you talked about collaborations and working, you know, with Senator Schumer and other leaders. What else can Hollywood artists and actors do to kind of make this issue, you know, more known and get more people to work for gun control?
I don't know. I mean, I remember when the Aurora shooting happened, I was so upset because the idea of someone just going to do something innocent, seeing a movie and have a good time. And a comedian named Caleb Medley, he was in the audience and he was injured. He had a new baby coming, and I just remember, I think because it was so, that felt personal because it was sort of one of my own. So I think just anyone who gets touched personally by a tragedy like this, I think it helps because you know they're coming from a very real place, and I would just say not to hesitate if you feel so moved to help a cause like this.
I will say this, I mean, you know, look, we're up against a very powerful lobby. Even though the overwhelming majority of Americans, not just here in New York, but in the reddest of states, are for rational laws on guns, it's tough. So having people like Amy, who people respect and listen to, out there talking about this, is a great antidote to the lobby that we're up against.
Matt Louisana from the New York Times. So, Commissioner, you both spoke about this initial phone call from the senator asking you to participate. Can you speak a bit more about how this came together, whether you had any input into what these measures might look like, and just, you know, were there conversations back and forth the last couple of weeks? How did this all?
Yeah, I had a lot to say. I'm pretty stubborn. We had that phone call, and we kind of both brainstormed and figured out timing, and then yeah, we were able to pull it together as quickly as we could and talk about what we were going to say and figure it all out. And
One thing Amy was certain on is she wanted to do something that was effective, but that could actually pass. And that was sort of speaking my language.
yeah, and I wanted to do something where I know people hear just the word guns and they freak out, and they just hear that you want to take away their guns. So I just thought if we could speak in a way where it was just explaining to people that it was just about restrictions and that it would protect their families, that it could maybe be effective.
Senator, after each one of these mass shootings, Newtown, Aurora, there's been a demand for background check legislation. In fact, after Newtown, it actually went to Congress but was defeated. What's different now, and do you think the fact that Amy, you're coming forward now, can help to tip the balance to finally get this legislation?
Well, you know, when after Aurora, we did get 54 votes on a bipartisan bill. Now, you need 60 in the Senate because the people against it filibustered, but we got a majority of the Senate for the first time in a long time. So we're making progress. We're making progress, I think, for 3 reasons. Number one, people are just fed up with gun violence, and particularly with these mass shootings. You just watch the TV, read the newspapers, and your heart goes out. You see these families whose, members have been taken away from them for no good reason by someone who never should have had a gun. Second, we do have overwhelming public support, and it gets greater. And third, to have voices like Amy begin to speak out reaches people that, frankly, I could never reach. People who, follow her on Twitter or whatever and wouldn't follow me. And so it's going to make a big difference.
And you have a lot of people who follow you. Do you think that you can actually put pressure on people who are elected officials to finally do something?
I have no idea.
Ms. Schumer,
So,
if I can ask you, and not Trainwreck, of course, but if you look at most of the blockbuster movies, they involve a lot of gunplay. Do you think the glamorization of gun violence in modern culture is part of the problem?
I really don't know. Do you?
Well, nobody cares what I think.
I don't know. I don't see those movies. I don't like those video games, but that's just a personal preference. I don't know what the statistics are to the links. If I were having a conversation with my friends, I would say I don't know.
Okay, we're going to end it on that, and thank you, everybody.
And love your comments and support for changing some of the gun laws and making them more restrictive. Thank you.